Josue and Duriba because I really enjoyed working with them.
All right. Do not downplay your contributions because so many of our students list you in a lot of their feedback at the end of their career, Hong, as being a significant contributor to their success. So do not downplay your contributions at all. Thank you so much for being here. And for those of you who are starting on this process, you will get to know Hong quite well over the next couple of years, and she is wonderful and will take good care of you. Next up, if you'll go ahead and unmute yourself, our next panelist is Ilse Colchado.
Yeah. Oh, hi everyone. So my name's Ilse Colchado. I don't practice law. I'm actually a graduate student here at UT Austin studying cultural studies and education. So I'm part of the curriculum and instruction department. So right now I'm sort of like in between sort of assistant LCAE, so the Longhorn Center for Academic Equity, who so graciously made this event happen. And so I'm here sort of in behalf of Explore Law and ease any questions that you have. It's a wonderful program. So I was actually kind of like the sibling project or program, which is McNair Scholars. In this case, very similar to Explore Law, where they prepare you for grad school, but Explore Law being more catered towards preparing you for law school and whatnot. So yeah, so that's sort of why I'm here. I'm also from Laredo, Texas. Like Josue, we went to the same high school, so we're Panthers. It feels like a long time ago. And yeah, I did my undergrad here at UT Austin, so I don't have a lot of headshots. I chose that as my graduate picture. And yeah, I studied Mexican American studies. So yeah, glad to be here.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. And I love that headshot. I'm kind of sad that I never took a photo like that. So you're giving a lot of us ideas for some photo ops when we get back on campus, for those of us who aren't there right now, missing it. So thank you for that. Let's see, next up, I think I just saw him pop on. So far, the two people who spoke were the program coordinators that I spoke of. Our next panelist that I'm about to introduce is currently practicing law in the area. And so I'm gonna go ahead and introduce, if you will unmute yourself, Rudy Metayer.
Well, I mean, I want to start by saying Hong has always been much smarter than me, so she's in a much better position than I ever can be. So, let's make that clear from the onset. Honestly, I'm just here to meet you guys and listen. I've been pretty excited. This has been on my radar. I love seeing people, particularly people of color, particularly first generation folks, learning more about law and seeing how they can apply to their lives, learning about interest and everything else from there. And then I love seeing UT, because when I was a kid at UT, and I do say that when I was a kid because it's, I was class 9, it started in 1998, so that seems like a long time. I mean, literally longer than some of you guys have been alive, which I'm like, dude, okay, I'm getting old over here. We didn't have these resources. We didn't have folks out there who were looking for us, particularly for people of color, trying to figure out what was going to happen regarding their avenues if they're interested in law. I'll tell you a quick story. I was a freshman, and I went over to Career Services, and I told the people there that I was interested in practicing law. The lady there asked what year I was, and I said I was a freshman. She paused, she put the papers away, and she goes, well, how about you come back in a couple of years and see if you're still interested? And I was just shocked and appalled, because I'm like, wait a minute, what are you doing? I'm really interested in coming here to hear from you. I never went back. And luckily, the Lord works in mysterious ways. I am where I am today, and I'm definitely blessed to, matriculate from the university. But we're here to hear from you guys. We're here to be resources for you guys. We're here to support all of you. And always remember that you do have people who want to see you succeed, who are going to be your champions moving forward. And you want to go ahead and help rely on us. I'm not going to lie to you. We're definitely busy people, but we wouldn't go ahead and volunteer for something like this if we didn't genuinely care to see you succeed, to make sure that, hey, listen, we may have been one of the few people of color in our classes, but we're not going to be the last one. We're going to pull people forward with us.
All right, thank you so much. Let's see, our next two panelists that are going to introduce themselves are currently UT law students. They have actually gone through undergrad just like you at UT, and they were participants in LCAE as undergrads. And so we are super thrilled to have them come back and give of their time to you all. I'm going to start off with our next presenter. If you will unmute yourself, this is Duriba Khan.
Hi guys, so happy to be here. Like Michelle said, I'm Duriba. I'm from Austin, Texas, actually. I did my bachelor's here at UT, Horns, woo. And I enjoyed my experience so much that I came back for law school. I just want to really give a shout out to Hong. She is so amazing, and please, please, please take advantage of her, because I would not have done half of what I have done if it wasn't for her. And to be honest, I don't know how helpful I can be, because I'm just in my first month of law school, but I'm here to share whatever pieces of nuggets that I have of information to just really help you guys out and answer any questions you guys might have.
All right, excellent. And having gone through the application process alone, you are going to be able to offer so much to these students today. Now, we might hear a little bit more dark and twisty side of law school from Josue, who's been in it a year longer. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over. If you will unmute yourself. Next up is Josue Teniente.
Yeah, don't worry, Duriba. It does. You learn, but it you know, there's still so much to learn. So yeah, like Michelle introduced me, I'm Josue Teniente, and like Ilse, I'm also from Laredo, Texas. So 956. We both came from the same high school, and I was the first in my family to, first of all, go to college, let alone law school. But when I first came to college, I did history and sociology, but I always knew that I wanted to do law school. I volunteered in some legal events and organizations that focused on immigration law and focused on DACA. So I feel like I've always kind of knew that this is what I wanted to do. It was challenging for sure, but it's been quite a journey to get here. I did a lot of studying on my own. I talked to a bunch of different counselors and a bunch of different resource centers. So I want to repeat what Duriba said, like go and talk to Hong, take advantage of all the resources that the Liberal Arts Career Services Center and all the pre-law things that are available on campus. I cannot recommend Explore Law highly enough. I knew it as Discover Law, but it's as I take it the same program. So if you guys are interested, it's something that I would highly recommend, and that I think is super helpful for people interested in this journey.
All right, thank you so much. For those of you who may have joined a little bit late, we just made it through our introductions of all of our panelists, but don't fret. This will be recorded and sent out to everyone who is in attendance today. So if you missed anyone, we'll get to know them a little bit more later, and I'll send you those video links. Just a few reminders, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Also, feel free to address panelists by name if your question is specific to something that they have said. And as a reminder, if we don't get to your question during a particular section, we will try and get to it by the end. So please stick around for the Q&A open at the end. Everyone so far who has spoken to us on our panel has mentioned the importance of knowing your resources. And already all of you who are here today have already made use of resources. You saw an advertisement to come and gather information about how to get involved in a law profession. So you should be very proud of yourself for already taking the first step towards finding more resources and more information. We're going to cover some basics about the law field because we assume that most people, since I know most of you are freshmen, are starting from step one. But feel free to ask questions that are a little bit more advanced, again, in the chat or at the end. So to keep this calm, I'm just going to ask questions of our presenters, and feel free to unmute yourself and take control if you would like to answer a specific question. Our first question for today is, what types of law degrees are there and how do they vary from each other, so that our students can make a choice about what type of degree they plan to pursue? Let's see.
I'll answer that question. There's the main law degree that people get is a Juris Doctor, a JD. So if you want to practice law, you need to apply for a JD. There are some new emerging law-related degrees, like a master's in law and LLM, which is generally a specialization in a particular practice area. Tax tends to come up a lot, maybe health LLMs. Those are more generally traditionally appealing to students who are educated in another country and then want to kind of see what it's like in law school in the US. So that's an LLM. And then a new emerging area is a master's in, I think, legal studies, I think, and not every law school has this. And this would just be a master's degree in legal studies. I think you would have to contact that particular law school to learn more about it. It tends to be for people who already have jobs in an industry and it's kind of like law related, maybe something related to compliance or contracts. So they don't want a full-blown JD. They're already a professional in their field, but they might want to get a MLS. That's kind of a new emerging area.
Right. So to practice law, like in a courtroom, which of those would students want to pursue?
Definitely a JD. If you don't have a JD, you can't sit to take the bar. And if you're not licensed by the bar, you can't practice law.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that answer. Did anybody have anything to add? That was very comprehensive. This is why we keep telling everyone, Nong is your go-to contact. She just spit all of that information out off the top of her head. And that is knowledge that sits with her every day, and the type of attention and knowledge you'll get if you go and meet with her. Let's see, next question. What different fields of law are there? And do you need to choose a specialty before you apply to law school?
I can talk a little bit about this if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it. Thank you.
So basically, in terms of what type of, what fields of law there are, I mean, it's anything that you can imagine that is regulated. So like, I'm interested in immigration law, so that's kind of a big federal issue. There's health law, there's business law, there's criminal and defense law. There's a bunch of different things that if there's a law passed about it, there is going to be some kind of emerging, there's going to be some kind of legal activity there. Regarding whether or not you need to choose a specialty, I don't think it's necessary, but I think it might be helpful. It's not by any means like you have to know exactly what kind of law you want to practice, or you have to know what kind of law you're even interested in. But the reason why I think it's helpful is because you then start to look at the different aspects of your first year classes maybe and think about like, oh, that's interesting to me. I'm interested in this particular aspect of constitutional law. Or, oh, I'm interested in business, so I'm interested in this particular aspect of contract law. But even if you're not sure about the kind of law that you want to practice going in, you learn very quickly that there's so many different opportunities and so many different fields that you'll find something to practice. You'll find something that calls your attention. It's not necessary, but like I said, I do think it'll help guide you in some way.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, to be honest, you don't really need to know what specialty you want to do, like as soon as you get into law school or whatnot. But use this time right now. Like every summer you should be doing something. Like if you think you want to go to law school, like figure out if you want to go by like interning in law offices. Like for example, I spent like, I think my first summer of undergrad interning in like a family law office, and then that made me they helped me decide that, okay, I don't think I want to do family law. So it just kind of makes your job easier down the line. So it's definitely worth looking into.
Yeah, along those lines, I'll take it even further. When you're practicing, you still may not know what you want to do. So, I mean, it's not atypical for people to go ahead and change their specific practice areas at all. I started off, I wanted to become a prosecutor. I literally wanted to graduate from law school, become a prosecutor in DA's office or county attorney's office, work from there. And what I ended up doing was I ended up actually starting off doing school law. From doing school law, I went straight to doing tax law, then health law, and now I do corporate litigation. So, you mean you can jump on the various aspects and various viewpoints of what you're doing. So I wouldn't necessarily, definitely find your passion. If I were going to say anything to you, if there's something that does seem intriguing to you, definitely go ahead and take that class. Something as well I would encourage is taking classes that are applicable to the bar exam too, because one of the things is that no one told me, I'm first generation, my parents never went to law school. First of all, they never told me about an LSAT. I'm like, dude, I have to take another test for taking an SAT. And then after that, you're taking this whole bar exam and, and that literally is going to be the hardest test you've ever taken in your life. You want to be able to be prepared for that. And it would help if while you're in law school, you took a class or two that are going to be applicable to that. For me, wills in the States was really important when Stanley Joe, who's still at the law school, who's been at the law school for a long, long time, but is also one of the most preeminent professors of wills in the States and lived in this country. But that class touched on contract law. That class touches on family law. That class touches on property law. So you're able to have all these different aspects wrapped into one class. So look for those things. And the best part is that you'll have people utilize your advisors at the law school and people there and there as well, because they'll definitely talk to you and put you in the right path for these things.
Yeah, I want to echo everything that Duriba and Josue and Rudy have mentioned, because I think that's true. You don't need to know your specialty or even, when you're going into law school, but I do think it's something that you can do that will be strategic and help you in your long run. As a first-gen student, we're not as familiar with the practice areas. We don't have parents or aunts or uncles or cousins who can tell us, like, oh, do you know the difference between litigation and transactional work? There are so many practice areas in law, and they all touch in different aspects of society and community and life. I think that's why we're drawn to them. But I think you also have to know yourself and know what your natural aptitude is. Some people really thrive under pressure, and maybe they're well suited for certain practice areas, and others are more into writing and research, and they might be better suited for other practice areas. And then we have our own interests, where do you want to work one-on-one with a client, or do you want to work on a broader, policy level? Do you want to work in an administrative setting, a judicial setting, higher education, court, for a company, a private entity? I mean, these are all different things that play into whether an attorney feels satisfaction in their job. And so I think by being strategic and learning about these areas, even though you can't quite work on your application just yet as a freshman or sophomore or junior, these will help you be strategic about the opportunities that you do decide to pursue going forward. And when you're in law school, you're not going to be wondering, what does a litigator do? How do I develop trial advocacy skills? Because you'll know going into it, like, oh, I want to do this type of work. I'm feeling this area, so I'm going to take classes that are related to that.
And I want to just buttress what you said, Hong. So Hong's husband, one of my close friends, and he does transnational work, drafting contracts and everything else over here. That stuff will kill me softly, but he's really, really, really good at that. I am litigation. I like being in the courtroom. I like, speaking about these specific issues and work for things. I like doing that. But I will tell you what Hong said was really important about actually taking a class and learning about litigation, learning about drafting. Take those classes, take those options. I would definitely, juvenile justice clinic, one of the clinics that I took over at the law school, that really had a substantial impact on my life, where not only litigation, but honestly it had me look completely different at the juvenile justice system in general. Something that I've tried to do and advocate on future down the lines. But if you take those things early on, then it might help you. And also remember this, you had one of the best litigators in the history of Travis County DA's office, who was a very quiet and shy law school student who did not want to remotely do litigation whatsoever. And he came out and he was absolutely phenomenal. So you never know, you might change. You might be able to see some of the interest right there as well, but don't feel the pressure that you have to make or break one specific decision between that, this day and age, because it's different. Practice law is very different from the generations before us, where you used to be with a firm or with an area for a long period of time. That's just not the case with our generation anymore. You move where you want to go and give yourself some freedom on that.
All right, perfect. Thank y'all. There were a couple of things mentioned, so I'm gonna kind of throw a question in that I didn't prepare our panelists for. But I know a lot of our students are wondering, how long of a time commitment is a law degree in general? But then y'all also mentioned the LSAT and the bar exams. And for many of our students, they might not have ever heard that terminology before. So if you wouldn't mind sharing what the difference is between those two exams and maybe how long they should study prior to taking those exams.
I'll take the LSAT and let Rudy handle the bar. The LSAT is the standardized entrance exam for law school. So all 200 plus ABA accredited law schools will require a candidate to either take the LSAT exam, and then there's about 60 law schools now that accept the GRE. So it's institution specific. The LSAT exam is comprised of typically 5 sections, 1 reading comprehension section, 1 logical reasoning section, 2 analytical reasoning sections, an experimental section that's unscored, super fun, and then a writing sample afterwards. Usually I encourage students to set aside 3 to 4 months to prepare for the exam. It's a pretty big time commitment, probably 3 to 4 hours a day, 6 days a week for this 3 to 4 months. Because it's kind of like training for a marathon. It's a big exam. You don't want to just show up the day of. You do kind of want to build up your endurance for it. You want to take the LSAT exam at least 1 year prior to the year you want to enroll. So for example, if you're thinking about starting law school in fall 2024, you would want to take your LSAT no later than fall 2023, preferably an LSAT exam that's given in September or October of that year, so that you can make sure that you are able to apply for an early decision or early in the admission cycle.
Well, since you guys have me at home, you get to see one of the cool things that you get when you study for the bar exam. So this book right here is one of, I don't know, how many did we get? 6, 7 books that you have actually specifically that are full of different questions, issues, everything else regarding what you learn to actually study for the bar. When our generation, no, I'm one of those people now saying my day, when we had the bar exam, we were just literally having it online on our laptops, and we were just getting podcasts and other things that we can actually, MP3s, we can listen to these things. So the way it works is this, and this is, I'm telling you this now, so you can roll your eyes, and I know it's going to suck what I'm about to tell you, but this is what happens. You graduate from law school on a Saturday. That Monday, you start studying for the bar exam. The bar exam is given twice a year. It's given in there's a July exam, and there's actually a February exam. And so usually what will happen is that you'll actually start taking bar prep classes. If possible, look for scholarships. Definitely look for scholarships, particularly first generation folks doing that. The information's out there for that. And you start studying. And I will tell you for a fact, it's grueling, it's hard, but you want to try to do your best the first time you take it, because you never want to have to take it again. because I mean, that tests the number of essays, the number of topics. I always tell people that you're at your zenith of legal knowledge, total legal knowledge, when you take the bar exam, because after that you start to compartmentalize and you start to focus on specific areas of the law. So if you're studying probate, but you're actually going to go ahead and be, an attorney who's going to be doing property law, that's not necessarily something that's going to apply to. If you're studying crim law, well, okay, if you're actually going to do civil litigation, that may not apply to you. But at that point, you're studying all these different subjects, and you have the Board of Legal Review actually go ahead and look at these things. So it's grueling, it's hard, but I'll also say this is something I always tell people, is that, listen, if I can do it, you can do it. It's the same thing that you have everything in your life. You got to remember that you're getting prepared. Everything prepares you for different aspects in life. When you graduated from kindergarten, you were able to get prepared for first grade. When you graduated from 5th grade, they had you ready for 6th grade. When you graduated from 8th grade, same thing for 9th grade. You graduated from senior, they got you ready for college. It all builds on itself on each other. So it may seem taxing, it may seem scary, but you can do it and you'll be prepared to do it. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But I will tell you, take it very, very seriously. Because Hong and I have some friends who didn't take it seriously and they didn't pass the bar exam the first time, or the second time, or the 4th time that they took the bar exam. And so you don't want to find yourself in that situation. So take it seriously. There's a lot of information out there for you now to be able to prep for the exam. But again, if we can do it, you definitely can as well.
I know the exams sound really intimidating, and they are, but they're definitely doable. Josue and Duriba will be joining us soon. Rudy and I did it. You guys have all our support. I know the bar exam sounds scary, and don't worry about it because it's pretty far off in the future, but you do, Rudy's right. You literally do graduate, and then like the first business day, you are already pretty much cramming everything that you learned or didn't learn over 3 years over like 2.5 months. That will probably be the worst summer of your life, but it's worth it, because once you pass the bar and you're licensed to practice, you can pretty much practice in any area of law except for patent law if you don't pass the patent bar. That's a different story.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And you have that bar license and you're a member of the bar, and you're a member for the bar for life, unless you have to come see me on the Board of Disciplinary Appeals for some different issue. We won't talk about that, but in all sincerity, that's another reason why. Get in there, study your hardest, do your earnest right there as well. Again, it's kind of like, okay, remember when you're driving a car? I don't know if you guys were like me. I was really, really worried about learning how to drive a car. I was like, wow, that's a really big deal. I have to go and drive it. But I thought, well, you know what? There's some people that, I don't know. If they can drive a car, I can drive a car too. It's the exact same thing about the practice of law. It's a lot of work, but if you weren't ready, if they weren't preparing you for it, you wouldn't be in it. So you guys are already sitting here. Let me put it this way. You being here on a Thursday night instead of, either you shouldn't be going out with your friends unless it's 10 people or less. Councilmember Metayer saying that. But, at home, drink, just relaxing, watching Netflix, something like that, that shows your commitment level to what's going on to your career and your path. And I got to say, that's really, really impressive, for each and every one of you. So you already have that discipline in you, and it's just the application of discipline and actually you putting it to work and making a strong difference.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Now, I know a big concern for a lot of our students is financial cost of law school. So for a lot of students, they sent in questions before this, and one asked, they said, my undergraduate degree will be almost free to me due to grants and tuition assistance from UT. Should I expect a similar experience with law school? If not, how much does law school typically cost? And some of our current students might be a good answer for that, because that's something I'm sure you consider every day.
I can take this question. So I think it will depend on some of what Hong talked about earlier, was like getting in through early admission and early on in the cycle. And I think at that point, you have a greater chance for scholarships. You have a greater chance for money that comes in with offers of acceptance. And so I don't think that it'll be completely free, at least quite to the degree of like undergrad, because I know my undergrad degree was largely funded by grants and financial aid, but it's not going to be quite so similar because law school is a lot more expensive to start with. For UT Law has a cheaper price, for example, for in-state students who have been here for a while. And so it's not quite so bad for certain law schools and certain categories of students, but it will be more expensive than your undergrad degree. I don't think, I may be wrong on this, but I think the average cost may be like 100,000 to 200,000, depending on like if you're doing in-state or out-of-state. But there's ways to navigate that. It's not quite so intimidating if you get scholarships. One of the things that you often do during law school is get jobs during the summer, and those jobs, depending on the kind of job, you get money that is pretty substantial. So you can use that to start paying off some of your debt if you get enough of that. It's also just kind of part of the package. At least that's how I've accepted it. It doesn't have to be by any means. There are some of my friends that are being very smart and returning any excess money that they don't need in terms of living quality and things like that. But it's not going to be quite the same as an undergrad experience. I think it will be a little more expensive, but it's not terrifying. It's not something that you should be too concerned about, I think. Any of the other panelists, please feel free to rebut me if I said something wrong or incorrect.
Yeah, just to add on that, I would say and UT is actually one of the cheaper law schools. Private law schools can cost up to like $45K a year, and that really depends on that's not factoring like living and whatnot. It's not impossible to get a full ride. It's definitely possible. If you have the right GPA, the right extracurriculars, the right LSAT, you can do it. I could not do it, but there are, for example, depending on what field you go into, there's public loan or payment programs. And there's also a lot of scholarships that you could find online, especially for people of color. There's a lot of grants and whatnot. So that's something that's worth looking into.
Before I forget this thought, if any of you or any applicants qualify for financial or federal financial aid, you want to submit your FAFSA sorry, this is super confusing. If you want to be eligible for federal financial grant, and that includes law school, you need to complete your FAFSA as soon as possible, but the application doesn't open up till October 1 at midnight. So just want to put that out there. I was trying to type it in the chat box, and I'll probably do it after, but in case I forget. How scholarships work in law school they're primarily merit-based. They're going to be looking at your GPA and your standardized test score, whether it's LSAT or GRE. I would say out of the 200 plus law schools, probably only 2 or 3 look at need-based primarily. That would be Harvard and Yale. Every other law school is going to be looking at your aptitude for doing well in law school, coupled with your GPA, coupled with how early you applied in the admission cycle. So at the beginning of an admission cycle for a law school, which is typically September through the end of the year, the dean of the law school will give the admissions dean some amount of money. We don't know what amount of money, but they get an amount of money and they're told, these are our priorities, give scholarships to these types of candidates. Has to meet some kind of GPA, LSAT combo. If you want to see how a law school distributes the scholarships, you can look at a standard 509 form, which I dropped in the box over there, and go to the second page at the bottom. It will say how many incoming students got a scholarship, and then it does the breakdown. It's not exact, but it gives you an idea of if they prioritize. Do they give out full rides? Do they give out partial scholarships? Are they half to full tuition? Are they half tuition or less? How many do they go over? If there's any scholarships that go over, it's probably because they won some kind of fellowship. Like Duriba said, it's probably public interest oriented. But that can give you an idea of how a law school might prioritize scholarships, because some law schools are of the mindset that they want to make sure that every student gets some kind of financial aid because they know law school is expensive. And other schools are more of the mindset like, hey, we're going to reward the students who we know based on their GPA and their LSAT or GRE have done well and will likely do well. And because, you know, they worked hard in undergrad, they're probably going to do well in law school, so we're going to reward them. So that will give you an idea about how much scholarships you'll get. The reason why you want to apply early in the cycle, and when I say early in the cycle, I don't necessarily mean by an early decision deadline, but you know, if the dean has a certain pool of money, every time they admit a student, they usually offer them some kind of scholarship at the same time. You can imagine that after October, November, after they've done a couple of admits, it's going to be different when someone applies in January or February, because there will be less spots at that time and potentially less money. Students don't usually have to commit to going to a law school until I think like the first week of April. So potentially more money could come back in, but then it's a little bit riskier at that point. So if you want to play on the safe side, I would apply before a holiday break, because the majority of applications tend to come in after a holiday break.
That is great advice. Let's see, our next question. Okay, so we know that law school is obviously going to be harder than undergrad, but what should students expect in law school, and how is it different from the undergraduate experience? And Josue has a massive grin on his face, so I imagine he has thoughts. Sorry to call you out there, Josue.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I don't know. So I feel like in undergrad, you can get away with not. So I think the biggest difference is that in law school, a lot of it is much more self-initiated. And I think for undergrad, that is also true, right? You have to get yourself to class, you have to get yourself to lectures, you have to do your own papers, and like it's not an easy process. But I think with law school, you take a lot more initiative in your own work and a lot more initiative in your own studying in a way that isn't really structured. Like you'll get a syllabus on the first day of law school, or you'll get a syllabus a few days before law school, and you will have already had to have done the reading for the first day, and you will dive immediately in and be like, okay, so what are the facts of this case? What is the holding? Yada, yada. And you take the initiative to try and learn more and to try and be prepared for cold calls and to try and be prepared for class, but everyone's also on the same boat with you. You're all trying to like get ready and learn everything that you can. But you know, it's much more about taking the initiative on a lot of the things that you need to get done for yourself and for your own edification. I think Duriba can back me up on this. What do you think? How is it different from undergrad?
I would say it's a lot more reading for sure. That's something that shocks me to this day. And it's not even just like reading where you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like you have to it's very involved reading. So if you want to just practice, I didn't do this before I started school, but like read a lot in your free time, because it'll definitely help you like having those skills. Also, like unlike undergrad, you can't like pull an all-nighter. You can't like work mindlessly or aimlessly. Your brain, at least this is what I'm getting from my like 4 weeks of law school, your brain has to be on all the time. And again, like Josue said, you have to take a very active role in your own learning, because like if you fall behind, you fall behind. And yeah, it's kind of like that in undergrad, but I feel like there's more recovery. There's like time to pick yourself back up. You can do a paper in like a couple of days, versus for law school, like you can't. To be really good about organizing.
So, you know, and again, and this may be just because it's unique, I loved law school. Law school was the coolest thing in the world. You could pay me a stipend to just go to law school and hang out there. You get to go ahead and be in the cutting edge of the law, speak about these specific issues, debate on them in class. I mean, absolutely loved it. And I loved it so much more than undergrad. Because in undergrad, listen, okay, I did not want to take that chemistry class. I did not want to know about biology. I didn't want to, those math classes. No, that's okay. I'm fine. It's perfectly good with that. And, you get to, I mean, at least for someone like me, I mean, it was awesome. And in my undergrad was government and philosophy. So I love reading. I love the application. Strangely enough, in law school, I use my philosophy degree a lot more than in my government degree. I mean, because then you start to realize, oh, wait, these are the same concepts that they've been talking about for literally thousands of years, and we're just applying them to specific laws. Okay, I get that. Let's go ahead and move forward with that. I would encourage you, is everyone at UT here?
Yes.
Okay. Alan Sager's con law classes. Take his classes. His class will get you ready to go because he makes you learn how to brief. He makes you have to analyze these specific cases. They're simply phenomenal. They're not easy classes, but they're fun because you get to talk about these constitutional issues and con law and everything else from there as well, debate these topics right there, but they're absolutely phenomenal. I will tell you that, man, I mean, I went back to him and I told him, I said, wow, everything you had us do in class was what we were doing in law school anyway. That's awesome. That's great. And learning how to brief and do those things, that makes a difference. Oh, I just saw the name. Alan Sager. Professor Alan Sager. I think he should still be there. If he's not, I'll check and see about that. But to me, I really, really enjoyed law school. And I love the idea of this. Hey, wait a minute. In undergrad, you actually had to go ahead and you had these tests. I mean, you had a quiz and you had these tests that came up every couple of weeks, etc. Law school, you get one exam. I love that. Hey, wait a minute. Okay, so you know what? I get to go ahead and I'm not going to say slack off, but you get to go ahead and relax and learn and everything else and organize right there as well. And then you know that, hey, I got to be ready. Like as soon as, I would say second week of November hits, you got to be ready. You got to be ready, in drive, ready to go because you know that exam's going to be coming in December. And, and you're able to work from there as well. But I will say this to you again. It's kind of the same thing I said to you about getting prepared. My personal opinion, if you go to class every single day in law school, you should be getting a C. If you go to class every single day in law school and read read what the readings are, et cetera, right there, there's no reason for you not to get a B. You go to class every single day, do the reading of the topics, go ahead and actually participate in class, talk to the professor, talk to the TA. Yeah, you should be getting that. You should be doing well. You really can. I mean, it's that dedication though, right? But you also have to do that in undergrad. Because remember, the big difference, I have a 17-year-old daughter, which makes me feel so old to say that. And I keep telling her about what's going to happen next year is, hey, the big difference is, hey, I'm not the one there to tell you need to get up and go to class. That's on you. But I will tell you the work and everything else that you did in high school has you prepared to do that. I mean, you just have to it's a self-initiative, self-starting right there as well. And you guys are already doing that. Again, you're sitting here on a Thursday night talking to old people like me. So that tells you that, hey, I'm interested in, you have that self-starter personality in course with that. So yeah, please, absolutely, make sure that you take care of your work and set up, from that. But I will tell you, I mean, like I said, I love law school. It's one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life.
I just want to add on to that. One thing I didn't know when I went to law school was that your grade is literally hinged on one final at the end of the semester. Rudy loved it. I hated that. That was really scary. And I also didn't know that you could ask your professor to see like old practice exams and you should practice beforehand. Or you could go to the library and see if they have practice exams. Write out the answers because it's fairly subjective and get their feedback. And don't be afraid to ask questions. You really can't. It's very easy to fall behind in law school, especially if you're a procrastinator, and it's a little easier in undergrad to catch up. But in law school, it's all on you. And that can be really stressful if you're not expecting that. And Rudy's right about being disciplined. It's essential. It's going to be essential to you in law school, but also in life, in your practice, because your clients are going to depend on you. And they're really not going to be forgiving about not meeting deadlines or not giving them the information they need. So this is a skill that you want to start early and practice. A lot of students don't know that law schools are open to students sitting in on a first year class. we're really lucky because we have the law school on the other side of our campus. Normally, if we weren't in a pandemic, they would totally be open to you guys coming to sit in on a first year class just to kind of see how it's run a little bit differently than an undergrad class. And I think even just being in the law school environment and, you know, kind of hearing the buzz of students walking around can give you an idea of what it's like.
I would also encourage you to join a study group or create your own study group, because I will tell you, when you're able to articulate or teach to other people topics that you're learning in class, that means that you've mastered that topic. And that makes a big difference, because what you're really doing, just like Han's saying, is you're regurgitating, you're articulating what you've learned and applying it to a specific situation scenario. That's what you're doing, right? Because remember, you're a lawyer. What are lawyers? They're problem solvers. That's what they are. So, hey, wait, I knew this issue happened right here. Let me try to apply it over here. It may not necessarily be completely on base, but let me make an analogy or make an argument that makes that assessment occur in that creation and draw those specific lines with each other. So, you know, it would be really, I mean, what's really, luckily, we got lucky at UT is that, and I guess, Hong, no one remembers TQs just being in charge of the societies anymore, or even, I mean, they have their societies. So luckily about UT is that you have different societies. You have your own small groups. And a lot of other law schools from what I hear are doing that too as well. So they create those small groups early on where you have someone, like for myself, I was a society mentor, you know, and so, you know, one of the things was that with my quote unquote kids, you know, who were like a year or two younger than me, you know, I'd make sure that, you know, I was able to help them with issues and concerns they had at their classes, provide outlines, you know, if they needed questions or concerns regarding professor, direct them to someone else. Financial aid, because hey, there's a lot of things that happen that you're trying to take care of. You know, I myself, I had my, you know, I just told you about my 17-year-old. She was in law school with me. So I had this little girl with a Hello Kitty backpack, you know, with headphones on, watching The Simpsons and coloring books while I'm busy in law school right there as well. That's not easy. You know, you're trying to balance that and work from there, you know, from that. And, you know, these other issues, because you still have life, right, going on while you're in law school, and you're still trying to balance that. And it's a different place from, I mean, you know, the maturity and maturation level that changes, you know, going into grad school from there. Those things make a difference, you know, from that. But again, you guys are going to be okay. You're going to be fine. You have the discipline, you have the ideas, the mindsets. Just make sure you apply them, but don't be worried about it. You'll do well.
All right, thank you. Let's see, a next big question that a lot of students sent in: what steps should I be taking now if I know I want to apply to law school?
Participating on a program on a Thursday night?
Yep.
Oh, Wednesday, sorry. Coronavirus.
Like, I guess a better way to...
I can answer the question. Sorry, I didn't want to dominate, so I thought other people were going to speak up. I would say things to do right now would be cultivate relationships with your professors, because you're going to need academic letters of rec from them. That's something that a lot of first generation students don't think to do because we're kind of shy, or we don't know that we can talk to professors. We're not sure what to say. It feels awkward. They're in a position of authority, etc. Lots of reasons why we don't talk to professors. I'm guilty of it myself. But you will need academic letters of rec, and that's one part of your application that a lot of students don't really think about till they get to that point, and then it can be awkward to, you know, try to develop a relationship with a professor in like 2 weeks. So over time, you know, think about taking multiple classes with the same professor. Think about being in classes where it's a smaller ratio, like one professor to 20 students or something, where it's less intimidating than one professor to 200 students. Because one of the things law schools look for is how engaged you are in learning and how intellectually curious you are, and professors are in the best position to talk about that. You know, putting together your application is kind of a little bit like humble bragging, but you can't brag about yourself. But a professor who's worked with you can absolutely brag about you and talk about how wonderful you are and how prepared you are for class and how enthusiastic you are about learning, and how they know that you've been interested in going to law school for years because you've checked in with them on a regular basis. So think about doing that. Another thing I would recommend is learn about how financing law school works. It is different than undergrad. It's definitely possible to get scholarships, but you have to know so that you can be prepared to study for the LSAT. If you need to get LSAT, an LSAT prep scholarship, you need to know where to look for those types of things. If you need to work to save up money for that, that's something you want to start early on. And you want to think about talking to people and asking questions, doing things exactly like what you're doing right now, going to these panels, going to pre-law events. Anytime you meet an attorney, don't be afraid to ask them questions, especially if they're attorneys of color, because we've been in your place and we want more people like you to come up behind us. We don't want you to be the only ones in your class. We'd love to see a class full of everyone in here. And so definitely don't be afraid to ask your questions and, you know, learn as much as you can so that you can be strategic about the opportunities that you will pursue. And I will say, strengthen your reading comprehension skills, because this is something that you cannot learn overnight. Even with 3 to 4 months of studying for the LSAT, if you're not an efficient reader, you have to practice. And the articles or the articles that you will read on there are very obscure and abstract. It's nothing that you have to memorize, but I would recommend pulling yourself out of your comfort zone, going to PCL or checking out like a journal from PCL on things related to humanities or science or economics, things that, you know, if you're studying science, read some humanities. If you're studying humanities, read some economics, because the articles you're going to get are going to seem very obscure and weird. But the point is, can you read it quickly and can you figure out what they're trying to say and what arguments they're trying to make? So that's something that if you start practicing early, you'll get more comfortable with it over time.
And Michelle, I wanted to answer Andy's question. So Andy put in there is that something that we hear often, and Andy, I'm just going to tell you straight up, that's just not true. That, you know, we hear that over and over again. And, you know, you've got to remember, okay, so for example, UT Law, right? So when Hong and I graduated, we had 500-600 students in our class, right? And everyone likes Austin. So what are they going to try to do? They're going to try to get a job in Austin, and they're going to try to stay here in Austin. So you had one of the most saturated legal markets in the country. The only one that had more attorneys per square capita was Washington, D.C., which you can expect why with that. But I will tell you, our biggest issue in the practice of law is that there are not enough attorneys to go around to various areas of the state. There are so many different places, so many different towns, so different communities that need attorneys and need legal guidance. You know, the different folks over there just don't have legal representation. And honestly, you know, if we're going to talk from a criminal law standpoint, it makes a discernible difference on who's representing you, what the actual application and pursuit and ultimate resolution of a specific case is, you know, regarding that. If we're talking about from a civil litigation standpoint, I mean, it's analogous, but we're just talking about money here, right? But still, you know, the ultimate resolution of a case, if you're not having quality attorneys doing that, you may have to pay a lot more than you'd like to, or if you were going to collect more in a specific case, you're not going to get as much because you didn't have a quality attorney there. So it's really, for our issue, is trying to get enough attorneys into these specific areas around the state, around the country, you know, for that. So I would definitely not be concerned as much about, oh, well, you have a saturated market, I'm not going to find a job. It's definitely, you're going to have a much more competitive legal market. I don't know if you need to worry about that as much as Josue and some other people, not just because you're not in law school yet, and we'll see how the market goes, you know, after COVID-19, because I mean, there's definitely some redistribution of work and, you know, and honestly of how firms are being run now. I mean, right now I'm at home, you know, and I'm working from home here. I mean, but I have my office in downtown Austin, and, you know, I go there maybe every couple of weeks, maybe if so, check in, etc. But I can't tell you the number of hearings I've had via Zoom, how many depositions I've done via Zoom. And, you know, now we're talking about trials via Zoom. So, you know, the market, it's going to be very interesting what's going to happen with the legal profession in the next 5 years and how it course corrects in a variety of different ways. But what thing that we will need quality people like yourself, Andy, who are becoming attorneys, and making sure that you give people the quality representation that they need.
I think Ilse was going to say something, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if y'all, if you want to talk about I'm kind of filling in details, but I want to make space. Or Michelle, what do you think? Just for students who've been through Explore Law and their experience about it.
Yeah, so that kind of moves us a little bit into the next question. For the sake of time, I'm going to move us into that one, but feel free if you had things to say on what steps should I be taking now that haven't been discussed yet, please put them in the chat. Right now, our next question is, are there any resources available at UT to help me prepare for taking the LSAT or applying to law schools? And I know we've heard quite a bit from Hong, so let's go ahead and start off with Ilse so that she can talk about the Explore Law program that Councilmember mentioned earlier, and then Hong can talk a little bit more about her opportunities through liberal arts.
Yeah. So again, Explore Law is housed under LCAE, the Longhorn Center for Academic Equity. There's so many acronyms at UT, but I think this is a very, a really great program, just simply because, especially if you're still thinking about what you want to do, Explore Law is a really great way in itself, right? It's already iterated of like exploring. So this program is tied with ACC and Houston-Tilson. So it's sort of like kind of a long commitment in terms of depending on how you feel throughout the program. So I just want to kind of hurry up on this, but there is, one of the things is they have workshops over sort of like what is law school, what are better ways to study for the LSAT, what's the experience of being in law school, and also just like finding community. I guess that's where I'm coming from. I'm an education person, so for me it's like all about like what is community, how can you find connections, right? Because like it was mentioned before, right, like you're not just a law student right now or thinking about becoming a law student, right? It's also like the holistic person that you are, and I think that was my experience as being part of LCAE. And I think Explore Law is really a good place for you to like, if this really is your passion, it'll get you connected, and a good way to understand your future and your goals. If you go into the link that I placed in there, there's also, I think it's a very easy application process. I actually have my notes because I didn't want to butcher this, but definitely have a resume, have some letter of recommendations. You do an analytical writing sample, and then just your own information. So I think it's a really great program to check out for Explore Law. I was kind of, like I said, I was part of the McHaney Scholars Program, which is like a sibling program. So that's how I got into grad school. So yeah, I apologize. I know maybe that wasn't very helpful. I'm not a law student. This is very intimidating being around a lot of law students and people that do law. So, but yeah, thank y'all.
All right, and you did great. Let's see, Hong, what about available opportunities other than just meeting with you, which I see students are already reaching out, but what are resources available through the pre-law program with you?
Well, UT doesn't have a LSAT prep program, but LSAT has partnered with Khan Academy, and that is free. And then the Hispanic Bar Association of Austin also gives scholarships out to students who are looking to help, who need assistance with paying for LSAT prep. And you can also look into the Diversity Legal Scholarship Program with with Texas Appleseed. They offer scholarships, and they have a partnership with Kaplan every year. I don't know if you know of any more, Rudy. Those are the ones that come to mind.
I will say that if not for the scholarship from Texas Appleseed that I received a long time ago for the bar prep, I wouldn't be able to take the bar prep class, and I wouldn't be able to get into law school as I wanted. I mean, that made a big difference. I want to say that bar prep took, I think I only had to pay $200. Like it paid the remaining amount to it, and that was significant. And it's the reason why when I became president of the Austin Black Lawyers Association, which reminds me, okay, Hong, I gotta actually share that information with you because I specifically had the association create a Thurgood Marshall scholar program, as an LSAT scholar program, specifically to allow us pay for one student to pay for their LSAT. And so I'll make sure, I think you guys have my information. If not, Hong knows where to find me. And I'll make sure that I make the application available to all of you. But yeah, look for that because that does make a difference. You know, I didn't realize, you know, no one really told me, you know, about bar prep classes or any of that stuff. I didn't have a bar prep or a, I guess it's the practice classes for the SAT either. You know, that's not something I had when I was growing up. And so, but it does make a difference to be able to use those assets. And I think, Han, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's gotten better now where they can find old LSAT answers and other things now, right? And, you know, they have an opportunity to utilize those things, which, hey, that stuff's really cool. And I'll tell you, practice those logic games because there's nothing logical about them. That's another story.
Okay, sorry, I was responding to a message. Let's see. There was one more question before we're going to open it up to the Q&A. And for those that have something at 7 o'clock, I'm sorry we ran a little bit over. So if you need to leave, feel free just to look at the video links I'll send out later and to pop back up. You're leaving it. Are there any resources available to me? But the last question, I believe, is something that Hong hit on a little bit ago, but you might not have understood the terminology she was using. Are there certain law schools that are more credible than others to apply to? If so, where can I find this information?
That seems like a loaded question. I don't know what credible means.
You mentioned the accreditation, like schools that are
accredited.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes. So schools that meet the ABA's criteria for approved law schools are considered accredited law schools. There's about 206 nationally, and in Texas, there's 10 law schools. You can find information on the LSAC's website, and I can drop that in the chat box. But I would say that try not to fall into the belief that you have to go to a certain rated school. Really think about what your long-term goals are and if that school can help you reach your goals. Because we really want you to find schools that will help you, you know, find a fulfilling professional and personal career, whatever that may be, hopefully in law. And there's a lot of different ways to get there. And that's something that we could talk about more one-on-one. I don't want to take up more time, but.
All right, thank you. So making sure that you look into accreditation is helpful. Now for our audience members, I know that we've had a lot of people ask questions in the chat, many of which Hong answered. Thank you so much for putting a lot of that information in the chat. But now if you have not asked your question yet, or if your question hasn't been answered, feel free, you can unmute yourself, or if you are uncomfortable talking in front of this group, feel free to send me the question directly and I can ask it of our panelists.
Wait, you're about to be lawyers. You got to get used to asking these questions in front of people.
So I do have a question.
Okay, go for it.
I also wanted to mention, I'm also from Laredo, Texas. I went to Nixon High School on VMT, so just wanted to plug that in. I had spoken to a few other pre-law students, and our biggest debate is, do you recommend an undergrad to take easier courses for the sake of GPA, or writing intensive, reading intensive, preparing for that law school study mentality kind of courses?
Wow. I mean, isn't easier a relative term in all sincerity? I mean, you know, and I will say this, one of the best litigators I ever met, her undergrad was in music. So, you know, I mean, I don't necessarily know if they actually correlate per se. You know, I guess maybe Hong and some of the other people might have better answers for you, but you know, I'd say take what you like. You don't necessarily need to be like, you know, like I like poli-sci and philosophy. That's what I took, right? But I could have majored in business or, you know, gone, you know, comm school or something like that for that. Because I'm not going to say that it's not comparable, nor it's not going to be applicable to what you do in law school. You know, I think that's a question that you ask in general, not just just not just law school, but grad school and just in general, even in high school, right? Because in high school, you're like, well, how many AP classes do I really want to take if I can actually manage this and work from there as well? I mean, again, I don't really have a good answer for that, but I would say take what you like, challenge yourself, because part of it is challenging yourself. I know that there's working at the admissions office in the law school, they do look at your transcript, right? They do look at things, and so that does make a difference. If I got to take I don't know, golf all 4 semesters or something like that, that might look a little different than some other things with that. But it's a good question. It really is a good question. It's a very strategic question, which makes you think you're going to make an excellent lawyer.
Thank you.
I would say law school admissions are looking for candidates who are engaged with learning and who are intellectually curious. They truly don't care about your major, minor, if you're a double major, etc., things like that. There's lots of ways to show that you are curious about learning and just interested in a lot of different things. I would encourage you to think about it as, what is your goal? Is your goal just to have a 4.0? Or is your goal to develop critical thinking skills, writing skills, reading skills, things that are going to be fundamental to whatever your long-term goals are? I can tell you that when they get your transcript, they are going to look through your transcript and they're going to be looking for trends. And I can also tell you that the vast majority of students that I work with, I would say 99%, do not have a 4.0. And almost all of them get into law school. So it's not just people who have 4.0s who get into law school. They're looking at a whole bunch of factors, including, your engagement with academics, how well you do on the LSAT, what experiences you have outside of your academic obligations, what professors think about the quality of your work and your work ethic, your maturity, how informed you are about the profession, and they're going to look at your reasons for wanting to go to law school. So you want to take all of those into account when you're deciding.
And what Hong said, what's really important too, speaking to you guys because you're an undergrad, I hope you're taking the opportunity you're truly around the most diverse group of people you will ever be for the rest of your lives, period. Because as you get older and as you go into your careers and what you do, you keep segmenting farther and farther and further away from the general population who you're around and what you're doing with as well. And what's so unique about undergrad in general is that you're around those populations. You get to be around people with different viewpoints and ideas and concepts, and take advantage of that. Because I will tell you, yes, I am blessed to have all my degrees and all my debt come from the University of Texas. But I will also say that what's really helped me in life has been my ability to relate with people from various different aspects of life. And a lot of that comes from the people I met in undergrad and the different viewpoints and ideas in undergrad. I'm not trying to get political on you here, but, look where we're at today, right? One of the biggest issues we have, and one of the biggest skill sets you learn in law school, is that you've learned both sides of an argument. You learn very, very well, when you start practicing law, that you better know opposing counsel's argument just as well as your argument. Because if you only know one side of the argument, then you're going to go ahead and fail your clients and be able to anticipate and understand the other viewpoint right there. And that's what lawyers are trained to do. And if you're not willing or hearing other people outside of your own echo chamber regarding your own viewpoints and ideas, particularly right now, and this is where, so what you were talking about being a McNair scholar, good Lord, we need you. Because, we need people who are willing to engage, who understand concepts and ideas, who understand, policies, and understand that, guess what? Compromise is not a dirty word. It's what this country was based on. And you're able to go ahead and get things done, not by bullying your way through things, but by working with one another and be able to go make sure that you have that consensus ability to make things happen. Justice Ginsburg said it best, is that, make your argument and make it in a way that makes people want to join you in what you're doing, not spite you or work against you in what you're going with. You want people to join you in your mission. And we don't have that now. And so utilize the assets, the viewpoints and concepts, the resources you have in undergrad, listen to those things, maintain those things, incorporate that in your law school application when you're applying. Hey, listen, you know, I come from East Texas, but Lord, I learned this right here from someone from South Texas. Wow, I didn't know this was going on in North Carolina. This is interesting right here as well. You know, these different viewpoints and concepts, these are what makes it key. You know, and even when I was over at the LBJ school, that was something I emphasized enough, is that, you know, you want to hear different voices and viewpoints, because if you aren't learning them and you're not engaged in them now, it's not going to change when you get older. It's only going to be more upfront and more in your face. So you got to be ready to be able to deal with those different viewpoints.
Let's see. We had someone send in a question a little bit earlier, asking if there is a certain GPA that they should try to stay above if they want to be competitive when applying to law schools.
Just do the best that you can. Take advantage of all the resources that are available to you guys at UT, whether it's Sanger Learning Center, talking to your professors, undergraduate writing center, career coaches, etc. Use all the mentors and everything that you need. Don't be shy about asking for help.
You're at UT, and you guys, it's much harder for you guys to get in than it was for me. So thank you for making my degrees look better. And so just go ahead and, yeah, I mean, you're smart. You're here right now with it as well. Again, you're going to be ready. So just utilize those resources. Don't look, you don't want to ever lament and look back that you didn't give it your all or take advantage of everything you had in life, right? So you have those resources available. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how big of a difference it has having Hong over here on campus for you guys. I mean, that in itself is just gold, because trust me, as you can see when she's writing, I mean, this woman, she knows her stuff so well. It's scary at times right there, you know, how she's going with that. But yeah, you're going to be fine, but don't fail yourself. Utilize what you have in front of you. Same thing for the law school students. You guys are in law school right now. You got your TQs, you got your study mentors, you got your professors, you got everything else over there as well. Utilize that. Talk about that. This is one of the most dynamic eras in the history of this country. I mean, literally. I mean, we see that systemic change is truly happening, particularly for people that look like ourselves. Talk to people about that. Talk to allies about that. Because guess what? Block out most of the noise, because guess what? The majority of people in this country want to see people like yourselves succeed, and they want to see people doing good. And you guys have the opportunity to succeed and to do good. And people want to be part of that story. They want to be on that bandwagon. It's not just enough to have somebody who's going to write a good letter of recommendation for it. Make sure that they're invested in you and your career. And I'm telling you for a fact, you've got people on campus who will do that, who want to do that. You just got to go ahead and make the first move.
All right. Did anybody else have any questions that they were holding on to?
I think Tien had put a question in there about moments when you want to quit law school and how you push through. And Hong answered it with, you know, the issue of imposter syndrome. And let me just tell you, imposter syndrome, God, it's difficult because yeah, Duriba, you get what I mean. Law school for a long time was built not necessarily to the benefit or to cater to POCs. That's seen in like the fact that you have to take a test to get in, where historically you didn't have to. That's seen in where you have families of lawyers who send their kids in, and you know, oh, my dad's a lawyer, my uncle's a lawyer, and like as a first-gen student in all of this, I have no one who I could talk to in my family about these issues. But imposter syndrome gets to you. But what helps is having a community of people there who remind you that like you're there and you're grounded and we're all in this together. Like one of the things that really helps me deal with those issues are my friend and study groups, but also my affinity groups. There's this, there are affinity groups for like Chicano Hispanic law students, there are affinity groups for Black law students, there are affinity groups for Asian students. And they're all there to just kind of remind yourselves, it's like, hey, this is really hard, but we're all in this together. We're all in this trying to like learn what equal protection under the 14th Amendment is. We're all trying to learn what a contract is. We're all trying to learn all these different difficult things. And some of us are struggling, but we're all here for each other. There's great community in this law school, in UT Law and in other law schools in general, from all kinds of people, because we're all kind of understanding this is a difficult thing. And I'm not gonna lie, there are moments where I'm just like staring at this page that I've read 5 times in the last hour, and I just do not comprehend what it's saying because they decided to write it in like this really weird prose. But then I text my friends, I tell them like, I do not get this. We all jump on a Zoom chat and we're like, okay, we worked through this. This is what he meant. This is what they meant. And it's difficult, but it's having a community like that really helps you through it and helps you remind yourself like why you're there in the first place. I think community is one of the most important things you can learn in law school, because it'll help keep your head above water and it'll help you to survive and to thrive when really you feel like you're drowning.
Thank you for sharing that. I know right now so many students are experiencing not having a community when they've arrived on campus this fall as incoming freshmen. And so hearing somebody talk about community, I know to me reminds me about what helped get me through school as well. And so for those of you who are brand new and are having a little bit of difficulty finding your community, whether you're in undergrad or graduate school, once you get back on campus, it will be a lot easier to build that community. And I hope that you'll consider us all an extension of your community, because we are here wanting to give of ourselves to you. And so just remember that your community isn't just your peers, but it is also the people who are showing up and putting themselves out there for you. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up for this evening. I would like to start off by thanking our panelists so much. If you wouldn't mind giving a silent round of applause so that they can see how grateful we are for them. Thank you so much. I love the hook 'em going across silently. Yes. For everyone who signed in and for everyone who RSVP'd, I will be sending out a video recording link because I know there was a lot of information covered. I'm going to share all the information in the chat so that you have access to all of those links, and I will send you the names of all of our presenters in case you want to remember them after this presentation is over. If you would like to provide any feedback on this experience, feel free to visit the bit.ly link below, as we are always looking to improve the quality of the services that we offer to y'all in LCAE. But if you still had a question that wasn't answered, feel free to stay on. But thank you to everyone for showing up today, and thank you for investing in your education. And to our panelists, thank you for investing in our students. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for showing up today.
Thanks for having us. We had a great time.
Okay. Y'all take care. Have a good night. Let's hope the Lakers lose.
All right, y'all have a good evening.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye, Michelle. And sorry for like texting so last minute. I didn't know how to fill out the form to get the link.
Hold on real quick. Let me stop recording just so that you're talking.